Tonight's speaker is Katie Fallon, and Katie is the author of 2 nonfiction books. The first, Vulture, The Private Life of an Unloved Bird, which is the inspiration for tonight's talk. And then she wrote Cerulean Blues, A Personal Search for a Vanishing Songbird. She's also written or co-written with Bill Wilson 2 children's books. One is Look, See the Bird, and the other is Look, See the Farm. She is the founder of the Avian Conservation Center of Appalachia, a nonprofit organization dedicated to conserving the region's wild birds through research, education, and rehabilitation. She has served as the president of the Mountaineer Chapter of the National Audubon Society and as a member of the International Association of Avian Trainers and Educators. Katie has worked with birds since 1998. She is also a columnist for the Birdwatchers Digest, so many of you may have seen some of her columns. And one interesting fact about Katie is that her first word was bird. So she's been interested in birds for a mighty long time. Tonight, Katie's going to give us an up-close look at vultures, a bird most of us only see when they're gliding overhead. She will also discuss the life and habits of these often overlooked, underappreciated, and unloved birds. But I have to say, looking at the crowd we had tonight, I think that vultures are probably pretty loved here in DuPage County because we have quite a few people here to hear about them. So, Katie, welcome, Katie.
Well, thank you very much, Natalie. And thank you, Steve, for, I don't know if you could see, he was holding up the books during the introduction.
Oh yeah. Oh. I got one copy too.
Oh, nice. And I'll show you that one, the purple one, came out in 2017, but there's a new version that came out in 2020 that has a color photographs now.
Okay.
And I was very excited. It got republished with a different publisher. The first publisher who published it went out of business, which is like every author's nightmare, sort of. But happily, it got picked up by another publisher and they reissued it. So that was good. So thank you very much for having me. And thank you, everybody, for coming out to hear about vultures. This is a wonderful group of lots of people on the Zoom. And it's very encouraging that so many of you love vultures, or maybe will love vultures when we get finished talking about them, right? So I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen, and hopefully it will all work. And hold on a second. All right, why is this not, there we go. Okay, hopefully that everybody can see my screen now. It's always a little strange to give these Zoom presentations, although we're all pretty used to it now, I guess. But when it always sort of feels like I'm sitting in my bedroom talking to myself. And I sort of am, but hopefully you'll all laugh at my jokes, even though I can't see you. So anyway, so tonight's presentation, as Natalie mentioned, is Vulture, The Private Life of an Unloved Bird, which is the title of my book. And vultures aren't unloved by everybody, right? There are a lot of people who do love these birds. We had some other potential subtitles for this book were Vulture, Eat Your Heart Out, or Vulture, Happy Entrails to You, but we didn't go with any of those. So anyway, they're not unloved by everybody. This picture here, it was taken at Boyce Thompson Arboretum State Park, about an hour from Phoenix, Arizona. And if any of you have been birding there, it's a great place to go to see a lot of different species of birds. And another amazing thing about this state park is that they have 2 vulture festivals every year. They have the Welcome Back Buzzards Festival in March and the Bye Bye Buzzards Festival in September. And I should mention, just getting started too, that a buzzard is not really the correct term for a vulture, even though we use buzzard and vulture often interchangeably here in the US. A buzzard is the word that, the official thing that is a buzzard, I should say, is a buteo hawk in Europe. So in other parts of the old world. So if you say, red-tailed buzzard is what someone from the UK might call red-tailed hawk. So no one is really sure why people started calling vultures buzzards in North America, but the assumption is that when people from Europe came to North America and saw big dark birds, that they called them buzzards because that's what they would have been in Europe. So anyway, there are other vulture festivals in other parts of the country also, but this state park in Arizona has two, which I think is pretty awesome, and I've been to both. So this is that cover of the book I just showed you, and this new version just came out right at the start of the pandemic, which is, in some ways kind of a unfortunate that the book, the republished issue got launched and then, everything kind of shut down. But maybe it's okay if you're kind of trapped at home reading a book. So that's what the new cover looks like. And that vulture on the cover is a vulture named Boris. And we'll talk more about that bird in a couple minutes. But first, I want to talk about the big picture with vultures. So if some of you get bored hearing about vultures, this is like the most important information right at the beginning. So worldwide, vultures are primarily scavengers. There are some vultures that will eat live prey occasionally, and there are some vultures that even don't eat much animal material at all. But by and large, vultures are scavengers all over the world. Even though vultures in the old world and vultures in the new world are not very closely related to each other, they fill a similar role in the ecosystem, scavenging. Worldwide, most vultures have strong stomach acid and gut flora that allows them to eat rotten, diseased, dead animals, and they can neutralize dangerous pathogens that they may encounter in these dead animals, like rabies, anthrax, botulism toxin, polio, cholera, and others. And when vultures can eat these diseases and not be harmed by them. There are other things vultures can ingest that do cause them harm that we'll talk about in a few minutes, but diseases like this that may exist out in nature, vultures can eat them and neutralize them and help remove them from the ecosystem. And they're very efficient at removing carcasses also. There are some vultures that eat different parts of a carcass, and they can be very efficient at eating almost all of the carcass depending on where you are in the world, and they remove these carcasses that could otherwise contaminate the landscape. And that, of course, reduces the number and the concentration of mammalian scavengers. If you have a lot of carcasses sitting around on the ground, a lot of dead animal carcasses, you might have mammals congregating around the carcass, and mammals swapping saliva, fighting with each other, can contribute to the spread of rabies, which of course is a zoonotic disease that nobody wants to catch, right? So vultures can help reduce the number and the concentration of those mammalian scavengers. In some parts of the world where vulture numbers are in decline, the mammalian scavenger numbers sometimes increase, and then human rabies cases can often increase as well. So more on that in a couple minutes. But first, I want to show you some gorgeous vultures. These pictures, I should say, these are not pictures that I took myself. These are pictures that I found of these birds. My pictures are nowhere near as good as these. But this is kind of our most famous, probably, vulture in North America. We have 3 species of vulture in North America. This is the California condor, a critically endangered bird, one of the most endangered birds in the world. We only have about 500 or so California condors, both in captivity and in the wild. Their range is California, Arizona, a little bit of Utah, and they might kind of wander into other areas, Idaho, but they are critically endangered species in this hemisphere. Another vulture from our hemisphere, the king vulture. If any of you have been to the tropics, Central or South America, you may have seen one of these amazing, very colorful, awesome looking birds that are can often be seen kind of above the canopy. This is, I mentioned a minute ago that some vultures eat different parts of the carcass, and this is the bearded vulture. That's a species found in parts of Africa, Asia, and Europe, and their diet is 70 to 90% bones. And you can see that this bird has a bone in its beak. They will sometimes pick up a bone and fly up into the air with it, and then drop it onto rocks to smash it open to get the marrow. They even have, biologists say they prefer old bones and large bones that may be sort of light, but also have a lot of stuff inside to eat. So this is one of the last birds to scavenge out a carcass. This beautiful, intimidating looking vulture is Himalayan griffon. And this is a very large vulture species, lives in Asia. This bird can weigh up to 26 pounds, which is, even bigger than the California condor. California condors can weigh about 8,000 grams. I've got to convert that. But this bird can weigh 12,000 grams. So it's a very, very big bird. Another very large species from Africa, it's one of my favorites, is the lappet-faced vulture. And this is a species that is considered endangered. It's also very large, can weigh up to about 14 pounds. And if you compare these to the turkey vulture, which is the species we're mostly talking about, a turkey vulture only weighs about 4 pounds, a black vulture, about 4 pounds. So a lot of these birds in the old world are a lot larger than our birds here in North America and South America. But coming back to this big picture on vultures. So there are 23 species worldwide, 16 in Africa, Asia, and Europe, and then 7 in North and South America. And I mentioned that the species in the two hemispheres are not very closely related. Most people agree that vultures in Africa, Asia, and Europe are more closely related to hawks and eagles than the vultures in North and South America, which they share a common ancestor with hawks and eagles, but it's further back than the vultures in the old world, which is kind of interesting. So not very closely related to each other, but they do a lot of the same things for the ecosystem. Here in North America, we're sort of lucky that we have so many turkey vultures and black vultures, where in Africa, Asia, and Europe, 11 of those 16 species that live there are considered endangered, and 8 of them are considered critically endangered. So vultures are more likely to be threatened or endangered than any other group of raptor, which is kind of hard to believe when you think about how many turkey vultures we have here in the U.S. In North America, we mentioned our California condor is our critically endangered vulture here. And poisoning is a threat that sort of unites vultures worldwide. Even though, again, they're not closely related and they live in all different kind of habitats, poisoning is a threat to all of them. And it's probably the biggest threat to many vulture species is poisoning. The California condor, if you're probably familiar that with the type of poisoning that affects California condors is lead poisoning. And lead poisoning also affects turkey vultures and black vultures, but not on the same species level that it affects California condors. Lead poisoning has been identified as the greatest hurdle to the California condor's recovery. And we'll talk more about lead in a couple minutes too. And then in Africa and Asia, the poisoning that affects those species is different. In Africa, sometimes vultures are the unintended victims. They're sort of the poison might not be left out with the intention of killing vultures, but it sometimes is. Some herdsmen, maybe to protect their cattle, might poison a carcass with the intention of killing dogs or even lions or hyenas, and vultures eat those carcasses and die also. And in Africa and, in Asia, parts of Asia, some of you may have heard about the Indian vulture crisis, where several species of vultures in India that used to be some of the most numerous, some of the most populous vultures in the world became critically endangered in the late 1990s after going into kidney failure and dying. And it took several years to figure out what was causing these birds to die. And eventually, scientists pinpointed a veterinary pharmaceutical called diclofenac, which is an NSAID, sort of like Tylenol or Advil, that was causing these vultures to go into kidney failure and die. And diclofenac has now been banned in, I believe, India, Pakistan, and Nepal, but it's still used in Europe and Africa. So anyway, poisoning is a threat. Another threat to vultures in some parts of the world, especially Africa, is the trade in vulture body parts. Is something that has increased in the last couple of years since during COVID. There's been this belief that having vulture heads, especially your vulture brains or other body parts of a vulture, might protect you in some way from COVID, or also give you the ability to sort of see the future. So that doesn't happen here too much in the US, but it's a problem in Africa where the vultures are not doing as well as they are here. So now getting back to our turkey vulture. The turkey vulture, my favorite species of bird, it's the world's most widespread. So it has the biggest range of any vulture species, and it's probably the most abundant vulture. There are probably more turkey vultures than there are of any other vulture species, except one other species may be more numerous than the turkey vulture, and that is the black vulture. There probably about as many black vultures as there are turkey vultures. It's a little bit difficult to get an exact count for both of those species, but there are a lot of both of them. Turkey vultures breed from southern Canada to the tip of Argentina and nearly everywhere in between: Caribbean islands, coastlines, deserts, forests, mountains. Turkey vultures are found in many different habitats. Getting out of the cold is pretty important to turkey vultures. They're not usually found where it's very cold in the winters, but they are just about everywhere else, which is pretty amazing. Global population, maybe 15 to 20 million individuals. If you compare 20 million individuals to something like the global population of cerulean warblers, my other favorite species, there may only be 300,000 cerulean warblers in the world. So 20 million turkey vultures is a lot of birds. There are 6 subspecies of turkey vulture, 3 that breed in North America and 3 that breed in the tropics. And these different subspecies have different migratory strategies. Some are complete migrants, so they all leave an area. Some are partial migrants where they may migrate slowly. Some may stay around all year. Some may migrate a little further. There are some non-migrants. There are some populations that don't migrate at all, that are in an area all year. So they are very diverse within the species. It's pretty cool. So this is the abundance map from eBird of turkey vultures. And you can see that they really are everywhere, again, except where it is cold, very cold. Up in the northern Canada, you don't get too many turkey vultures, although there are some eBird reports that I have heard of turkey vultures being found in Alaska this year, which was kind of interesting. I guess they don't typically show up in Alaska, but there were a couple this year. And down in the peaks of the Andes Mountains, there in Chile and Peru, there aren't quite as many turkey vultures, but they are nearly everywhere else. They're really an amazing species. The red on North America is where they are not where they are found in the summertime, but not in the winter. So we have them here in the eastern US all year, but they are mostly out of the upper West in the fall and winter. So this is the view that most people get of a turkey vulture if you're looking at them from below. And this is one of my favorite quotes: "Let us praise the noble turkey vulture. No one envies him, he harms nobody, and he contemplates our little world from a most serene and noble height." And this is, again, a typical view of a turkey vulture, looking at it from the ground. The undersides of the wings and tail are light. That tail is relatively long and thin, and you can remember that turkey vultures have silver linings. So if you are looking up at a large dark bird, you can look for that silver lining all the way underneath the wings. Sometimes I'll have people say things to me like, "Oh, Katie, I know you like birds. I saw 5 or 6 golden eagles all soaring together. It was great," and I have to be the person who like ruins bird sightings all the time. And I'll say, "Oh, those probably were turkey vultures." "Oh, no, Katie, these were beautiful birds. They couldn't have been turkey vultures." But when you're looking at them from underneath, you get that silver lining. Oh, I'm getting excited. I'm knocking stuff off my table. So turkey vulture up close. This handsome turkey vulture is named Lou, and Lou is a bird that lives at the nonprofit that Natalie mentioned in the introduction, the Avian Conservation Center of Appalachia, which is a very long name. So we normally just say ACCA. It's a lot easier. We rehab injured wild birds with the intention of releasing them back to the wild, and some that can't be released can stay with us or go to other centers permanently to live as educators. And Lou is a bird that was hit by a vehicle and can't fly well enough to return to the wild. But he's a great ambassador for turkey vultures everywhere, we hope. So most turkey vultures, at least in the eastern and sort of the middle of North America, weigh about 4 pounds. Southern turkey vultures and turkey vultures in the tropics will weigh a little bit less than that. 4 pounds is about as big as a turkey vulture as you're going to get. They have about a 5 to 6 foot wingspan. So similar wingspan to a bald eagle, for example, but they weigh less than half of what most bald eagles weigh. So they're not equipped for carrying anything away. And you can see Lou's foot in this picture. It looks like a chicken foot. They don't have the real curved, strong talons that a hawk or an eagle or an owl would have. They're really not equipped for carrying anything away. That the toe in the back is called a halix on a raptor. And if you look at the halix of like a golden eagle or something like that, they have a really, really strong, sharp, curved halix that allows them to grab onto things and carry them away. On a turkey vulture, the halix is sort of like a pinky toe that doesn't really seem like it has much use. It helps them balance, but it's not useful for grabbing and carrying. So when people tell me a turkey vulture came down and carried off my cat, I do not believe them, because they cannot pick anything up in their feet and carry it. They don't even carry nest material in their feet. They can scrape with their feet and maybe, scrape some leaves around, but they can't pick up stuff and carry it away. So up close, the turkey vulture is even more handsome. I mean, look at that. Hopefully everyone watching just went, "Oh," right? Because it's so cute. Or at least very unique looking, right? So some of the really interesting features to point out about turkey vultures. First, they have that very prominent nose, right? They have nostrils that you can see through right from one side to the other side. And turkey vultures do have a very good sense of smell. There's been a lot of discussion and debate about how good the sense of smell is. And then there's been more debate and discussion about, do other birds have a sense of smell? People used to think no. Now people think, yes, they do have a sense of smell, but the turkey vulture still, we know, has an excellent sense of smell and can find food that's even been buried under like a light layer of dirt or leaves on the forest floor. And other species will sometimes watch turkey vultures. Black vultures, for example, will sometimes fly higher than turkey vultures. And when a turkey vulture locates a carcass, the black vultures will follow them to it. So they use their excellent sense of smell and their excellent eyesight to locate their food, which is dead things. We'll talk more about that in a second. So if you look at that beak is very, very good at tearing chunks off and swallowing. Turkey vultures can open their mouths very wide and swallow large chunks of food. And if you can look very closely at this turkey vulture's tongue, at kind of the back of the turkey vulture's tongue, you can see sort of little serrations like a saw blade on the tongue. And this helps turkey vultures kind of hold on to the slippery stuff that they are eating, because it's organs and entrails and other slippery kind of wet stuff. And that those serrations help them swallow that viscera, which again, they don't have hands to pick it up with, so they have to use that serrated tongue can help. You may notice too that turkey vultures don't have many feathers on their heads. This is something that some people think makes them look ugly, but there are a couple different reasons potentially for them not having feathers on their heads. One could be that they're sticking their heads into carcasses, so it would be not good to have a bunch of stuff stuck to their head feathers. People will say, you know, oh, Katie, you like those bald birds, they're so ugly. And I will say, well, if they weren't bald and they had a lot of feathers on their heads, you know, they could be a lot uglier with pieces of rotting meat stuck to their heads. Also, there could be some, there are some folks who suggest that not having feathers on your face can help you communicate with other turkey vultures or help you thermoregulate. But turkey vultures too can get very, very red, or they can get very pale. So this particular turkey vulture was hit by a vehicle, and he just had some road rash, and we were able to release this bird back out into the wild after he just spent a couple of weeks with us at the ACCA. So okay, I just had to put a picture of Boris in here because she is gorgeous. And this is an example of when her face was kind of flushed. It's summertime, it's hot outside. She could have been a little excited because I'm the person who brings the food. So, you know, when she sees me coming, she's like, she has my rats. Boris is a bird that was shot, and the finder named her Boris. And when we had DNA sexing done to determine that the bird was female, we already had been calling her Boris, so the name sort of stuck, but it's fine. And turkey vultures, you can't tell by looking at them if they are male or female, and you also can't reliably tell by weight like you can with some raptor species and some vulture species, but not turkey vultures. So moving along here, turkey vultures are obligate scavengers, so they are considered, you know, they do not kill things, right? Their diet is carrion or dead animals. There have been some instances where they have taken live prey, but they are very, very few and far between. And whenever someone observes turkey vultures eating something alive, you know, it gets like written up and put in a journal because it's very rare. Some of the things that they have been documented to eat alive have been like invertebrates. So Boris will eat live mealworms from my hand. And then other kinds of, you know, insects and other invertebrates that might be sort of along a shoreline, for example, turkey vultures might eat. There also have been some cases of them eating fish that have washed up on a beach and the fish aren't quite dead yet. So I don't, I know they can't, the fish are immobile. So if something is immobile and maybe not dead, you might, the turkey vulture might walk up to you and sort of start eating you, but that's very rare also. Some birds and nestling birds, turkey vultures may walk over and swallow, but that's also very, very rare. The vast majority of what they eat is dead, and it usually has to be dead for about a day before they eat it, which is interesting. And that's probably because that may be how long it takes for the vultures to find something once it's dead, for them to smell it or to see it and tell that it's dead. And I have tried to do the thing where I lie on my back in the grass and trick the turkey vultures into thinking I'm dead, and it hasn't worked yet. So anyway, so even though turkey vultures don't kill prey, there have been some suggestion that they learn where reliable sources of carrion happen, and maybe frequent those areas looking for food. Like they may learn where there are a lot of dead animals, a farm where carcasses are deposited, or a slaughterhouse or something like that, and they might kind of hang out in those areas to see if dead animals will be there. I don't think they encourage rabbits to cross the road, but you get the idea. And there are a lot of amazing vulture comics. This is one of my favorites. We already talked about some of these things. I'm a turkey vulture. My head is bare to prevent rotting flesh from adhering to it. I forgot to tell you this. To keep cool, I poop on my legs and feet. And this is, it's not really poop, it's expelling liquid waste. And in addition to keeping cool and helping the birds thermoregulate, it may kill bacteria on their legs and feet. And other species do this also. Other species of vulture, as well as some storks, do this as well. My main defense is projectile vomiting, which is one of the other amazing and charming things that turkey vultures do. And it's a deterrent for humans. If you imagine, approaching a turkey vultures in a nest, which is when the babies are very vulnerable. And I'll show you some pictures of that in a second. But turkey vultures in a nest are very vulnerable. And if something like a raccoon or a coyote maybe finds a vulture nest, if the young vultures vomit, it's possible that raccoon or coyote would eat the vomit and then leave the baby vultures alone. I have a beagle here at home, and she would definitely eat turkey vulture vomit, if given the opportunity. This vomit is also fairly acidic, and it could deter. It might be a deterrent also, or it should be a deterrent for a person, but it's not always. Turkey vultures nest in, I mentioned they don't carry nesting material. They don't build big nests like you would imagine, eagles or osprey to build. They're often nesting in caves, cliffs, abandoned structures, haylofts, old abandoned houses, deer hunting, tree stands, very big old hollow trees, under brush piles, sheds, anywhere where they can sort of kind of get inside something that's a little bit protected from the elements, but they don't actually build anything. They've even documented them nesting in abandoned cars in a junkyard, which is kind of interesting. This is a particular nest in southwestern Pennsylvania, where my small nonprofit and West Virginia University and USGS and a few other folks partner. Hawk Mountain in Pennsylvania is a partner also, where we go to turkey vulture nests and we take the babies out of the nests for a few minutes, takes measurements, take a blood sample to test for lead, and put a wing tag on the birds, and then return them to the nest. And I think I'm getting ahead of myself, so let me slow down. These are more baby turkey vultures in a nest, and you can see if you look at the lower right-hand corner of the screen, those kind of brownish red lumps, that is baby turkey vulture vomit. And a good trivia question could be, why is baby turkey vulture vomit worse than adult turkey vulture vomit? And if you think about that for a minute, the answer is that baby turkey vulture vomit is twice partially digested roadkill. So you remember, turkey vultures can't carry anything in their feet. So when the parents bring food back to the babies, they eat something dead on the road, and then come back and regurgitate it. And then the babies eat it. And then, the parents fly away. And then someone comes to disturb the nest and the babies throw it up and it's twice partially digested roadkill. So it can be pretty, if that gets under your fingernails, or in your hair or in your car, it really kills new car smell. I'm glad I put these sort of science notes on here. So turkey vultures, most often there are 2 eggs. They will nest once a year. Most nests will have 2 eggs, sometimes just 1. There have been a couple documented cases of 3, but it's almost always 2. And one of my favorite things is that both parents incubate equally. So the father and the mother turkey vulture will share nearly all of the duties equally for raising their babies, keeping the eggs warm, incubating the chicks, brooding the chicks. And the parents will sort of switch off. One will go to a communal roost while the other one will stay on the eggs, and then they'll switch, which is kind of nice. The eggs hatch after about a month, but the young are in the nest for quite a long time, about 60 days, which is a pretty long time to be in a nest. The parents, again, are not there. Once the babies aren't being kept warm anymore by the parents, they are not there very often. So the babies are left alone for long hours and long periods of time. Even after the babies leave the nest, they still kind of stay around it for another couple of weeks. And then they will leave the nest site when they're about 84 days old, and they will usually follow their parents to a communal roost with a bunch of other turkey vultures. And after that, they are pretty much on their own and they aren't supported anymore by their parents. And this is different from black vultures, which we'll talk for a few minutes at the very end of the presentation. But black vultures tend to stay in extended family groups for long periods of time, even years, where turkey vultures, sort of once the babies get to that communal roost, they aren't supported by their parents anymore. So now look at that baby turkey vulture face. That's adorable, right? So compare this to the other turkey vulture face we saw a couple minutes ago. They're quite different. Baby turkey vultures don't have a red head. They don't get that red head until they're about a year or even older than a year. It kind of fades to red, and the beak fades to white. The end of the beak is black when they're young like this, and then it fades to white over the course of a year or 2. And baby turkey vultures have white down feathers, which is kind of interesting. And these beautiful blue eyes that kind of fade to that stony gray or brown color. Someone told me at a presentation previously that this looked like Bernie Sanders, and now I can't unsee it whenever this slide comes up. But it's they're very adorable babies. They can be a little bit tough to tell if you don't know the difference of what a baby turkey vulture and a baby black vulture look like. They can be tough to tell. Baby black vultures, though, have brown down feathers, cream colored down feathers, and baby turkey vultures have these white down feathers. So so what are we doing with these baby turkey vultures when we get them out of the nest? I mentioned this briefly before, that we are, and I want to show, I think I saw Evan McCreath's name come up here as a participant. I don't want to call him out, but this is his wife, Amanda, in this picture, showing that, people are happy and having fun taking blood samples from turkey vultures. So what we're doing with these vultures, we are taking them out of the nest for about 15 minutes, weighing them, taking measurements, and taking a blood sample. And in this picture, a blood sample is being taken from this baby turkey vulture. So we mentioned in the beginning that California condors, it's a huge hurdle for their recovery is lead poisoning. And turkey vultures can be affected by lead poisoning also, but they can handle quite a bit of lead in their bodies and not be too sick from it. So that can make them a good species to study to get a sense of how much lead is out there in the ecosystem. If a bald eagle eats lead, for example, it only needs a tiny piece of lead to become very sick and to die, whereas turkey vultures can handle a lot more. So looking at how much lead is in their systems can give you a sense of how much lead is out there in the ecosystem, if that makes sense. And lead could be its own presentation or its own book. But if you wanted to read more about some of the studies that are kind of coming out of the Eastern US or West Virginia University, there's a paper you can Google Scholar search for it. I think you can read all of it. Chronic lead exposure is epidemic in obligate scavenger populations in Eastern North America. Sort of the one sentence summary of this paper is that pretty much all vultures, black vultures and turkey vultures in the Eastern US have evidence of being chronically exposed to lead. So, where is this lead coming from? There have been some studies on vultures and condors to try to determine the source of the lead, where they're getting lead. And the two biggest sources of lead, at least from that paper from the Eastern US, was spent ammunition and coal-fired power plants. So coal-fired power plants, of course, is lead that you breathe right in the air. And spent ammunition would be like if you shoot a white-tailed deer with a lead bullet and the lead fragments, and you field dress the deer and leave guts in a pile of guts. If you're a turkey vulture, that's awesome, right? The big predator has come through, killed something, and left parts of the carcass that the scavengers come in and eat. I mean, it's what's supposed to happen in a natural system. However, if there is pieces of lead, bits of poisonous bits left in the gut pile, the carcass, that could make the scavengers sick. So this picture here, I'm coming. I could talk about that for a lot longer, but I don't want to just focus on that. But these are two of my kids that I kind of make come with me and help. And this one is old enough to start taking notes about turkey vultures and their measurements. So that's proper field attire. And the birds are only out of the nest for about 15 minutes when we're doing this. So it's not, it's got to be sort of like getting abducted by aliens or something like that. We get them out, take the samples and measurements and put them back in. And it's usually July or August when we do this. It's very hot. The birds are often, they throw up, and there's, it's a little bit of a smelly, very sensory experience. So I mentioned that we put wing tags on these birds, and we do this for a couple of reasons. One reason is so when we're on the ground looking through binoculars, or even just looking with the naked eye at a wing tag, you can possibly read the number and then report the number to the Federal Bird Banding Lab, and then they can kind of tell you where this bird was tagged. Also, turkey vultures expel liquid waste onto their legs and their feet. So a regular metal leg band could corrode, or that droppings could sort of cake on there and harm the vulture. So these wing tags are light and floppy. They're sort of like a cattle ear tag, and it's like getting your ear pierced. It kind of goes through a thin piece of skin, and then the birds will wear it, wear it for the rest of their lives, and it doesn't impede flying. So this particular vulture, number 285, was tagged in Avella, Pennsylvania about 5 years ago. This bird is interesting because this bird was resighted all the way in West Palm Beach, Florida, not even a year later. And we've gotten a few reports of our tagged birds being seen, right near the nest site. But this one is the farthest one, the farthest distance away of any of our tagged vultures. And it was a bird watcher in Florida, was just watching birds and noticed that one of the turkey vultures had a wing tag, reported it to the Federal Bird Banding Lab, and then they got in touch with us, and we were able to communicate directly with the bird watcher who saw the bird, and he said there was nothing really remarkable about it other than it had a wing tag and it was feeding with some other turkey vultures in West Palm Beach. And I asked, was it at Mar-a-Lago? But it was not. It was at a wildlife management area. But that's the greatest distance that report we've had of one of our tagged turkey vultures. So this is another quick story about a turkey vulture. This bird, you can see something on its back. That's a transmitter that was donated for us to put on this particular turkey vulture. And this is the only turkey vulture wearing a transmitter from West Virginia that I know of. And if any of you do wildlife rehab or work with wildlife rescue, there's always sort of this, you know, at least for me, this nagging feeling of, you know, are we doing any good? Like, is this bird that we released really going to be successful, or was it injured because it wasn't going to be successful anyway, etc. This particular vulture was shot near a town called Davis, West Virginia, and came in for rehab, and we released her. She still has 3 shotgun pellets in her body when she was released, but it would have caused more damage to get them out than to just leave them in. We did not put a wing tag on her because we didn't really want to give her any extra weight, even though they're very light, since she'd already have this transmitter and she had been compromised by being shot. We didn't want to take the chance of giving her anything else to wear. So we released this bird at Cooper's Rock State Forest, which is right near Morgantown where I live. And this is where she went, which is pretty awesome. The map on the left, the sort of thin map, shows her movements. The star is where she was released in Morgantown, and she went all the way to northern Georgia and back. And when she came back, she returned to the area near where she was shot, not the area where she was released, which is pretty interesting. And then she went back to northern Georgia again, and then she came back again. And we haven't had any data from her since the end of 2016. We don't know if she's dead or, you know, if she transmitter stopped working. This is also about the same time that AT&T shut down their 2G cell towers. And I don't fully understand the technology, but apparently that could have an impact on the way her transmitter works. So she could still be out there with, you know, an old cell phone, because her transmitter sort of communicates with cell phone towers when she flies near them. So, and that's how she's tracked. That's pretty interesting. Hawk Mountain in Pennsylvania puts transmitters on turkey vultures also all over the hemisphere. And this is a turkey vulture near one of the northernmost nests that we know of turkey vultures in Leoville, Saskatchewan. And this is a bird that named Leo, and she travels from Saskatchewan to Venezuela and back every year. And they put the transmitter on this bird and her mate in 2007. And as far as I know, it is still transmitting, and the birds are still, they're still getting data from this pair of turkey vultures that has been together every year since then. Turkey vultures are considered strong pair bonders, or, you know, mate for life until one of them dies. They might find a new mate, but they have a strong pair bond. And these two return to nest in the same abandoned farmhouse every year, but they go somewhere different in the winter. The female goes again to Venezuela, and the male goes further south into Colombia. So they have sort of separate winter vacations, which may be why, you know, they're still together all this time. But this is the subspecies that's considered a complete migrant. So they all leave that upper west in the winter. And this is another turkey vulture named Linda that Hawk Mountain has a transmitter on. This is our third subspecies of turkey vulture in North America. This is a partially migratory subspecies in the desert Southwest. Okay, so I realize I don't want to run too far over time here, but I could talk about vultures all night. So this is an abundance map. I won't talk about them all night. I'm just kidding. But this is an abundance map of with eBird data. And I want you to watch turkey vulture movements throughout the hemisphere throughout the year. And here they are breeding in North America. Most of them are out of that southern cone of South America. And then they all come back. And then the birds go deeper into the southern cone. There is some researchers believe that when all the northern turkey vultures migrate into northern South America, that this causes a reciprocal migration and causes some of the turkey vultures in South America to move further south into the southern cone to kind of get out of their way. And then they go, back north when the northern turkey vultures leave, which is pretty interesting. Oh, I don't have to watch that again. All right, I want to spend a couple minutes at the end here talking about this beautiful bird, the black vulture, that you in Illinois have some black vultures, but we probably have more of them, I don't know if we have more of them in West Virginia, but places like Virginia, North Carolina, Florida have a lot of black vultures. And they are adorable, of course. They have a much worse reputation than turkey vultures, and their behavior is quite a bit different from turkey vultures, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. When you're looking at a turkey vulture and a black vulture from underneath, black vultures kind of look like they have white hands, and they have a short tail, and they tend to flap their wings more often than turkey vultures do. Black vultures, again, if you look at this abundance map, they are, and this one moves too, they are not as migratory as turkey vultures. They don't move as far. They stay pretty local to where they are all year. They are, again, there's kind of an imaginary line in the middle of Texas, and they don't usually show up much west of that, although there are some that are in Arizona, but not very many, and a couple show up in California sometimes, but they're really a bird of the southeastern United States and the tropics, of course. So black vultures and turkey vultures to an extent too are showing up further and further north on Christmas bird counts and things like that than they used to be. And there are people trying to figure out why that is. Why are turkey vultures showing up and black vultures showing up further and further north? One possibility could be climate change. As things get warmer, it allows these birds to stay further north. Also, we have built these amazing interstate highways that stay warm all winter. They serve up roadkill, all year long. I mean, here in West Virginia, we have a lot of road-killed white-tailed deer along the highway that provides, great food. Since these highways stay warm, the warm air rises off the highways, and that helps turkey vultures and black vultures soar without, expending too much energy. And our cities can serve as heat islands, where birds, especially black vultures, will sometimes spend time in the cities on rooftops, and they often pick like really nice neighborhoods to go roost on the roofs of houses, and sometimes people get mad. So black vultures, so why do they have this worse reputation than turkey vultures? And it's probably because they are reported to occasionally kill weak or dying animals in some locations. It's not in all locations. It needs more study. There are some places where black vultures are, very, very rarely or never reported to kill anything alive. And then there are other places where it's reported all the time. And there's research underway trying to figure out why. They're opportunistic, and they learn where to find reliable sources of food. So they are often maybe attracted to livestock giving birth in the field. So if you are giving birth, you're very vulnerable, right? And there are stillborn animals. There are maybe animals born that are having trouble. And there's also placenta and all kinds of other, very yummy stuff that's got a lot of nutrients that kind of comes out during the birthing process. That's easy to eat if you're a vulture. So it can be tough to tell if, black vultures are just eating placenta, eating something stillborn, or, eating something alive as it's being born. So it's difficult to know what happens, but they are reported to sometimes kill very vulnerable animals. So ways to prevent that, it's been suggested, getting a dog or just having people around, and also putting pregnant or very young livestock near a barn is something that can help with that also. But this is something that it's kind of a mystery, and if it's happening, how often, and how are they learning how to do this? So I'm not going to read all of this long quote, but Sometimes people say, oh my gosh, black vultures, they're new, they're not native, they're from somewhere else. Where are they? Why are they here all of a sudden? And this is a long quote from John James Audubon's species account from 200 years ago, describing the range of the black vulture and describing the behavior of the black vulture. And Audubon notes that black vultures were constant residents in all of our southern states, extending the whole, continuing the whole year in Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, Maryland. So the birds aren't new to these areas. They just may have not been seen for 100 years. Black vultures were, shot, persecuted like many other raptor species, historically. And black vultures also were, DDT has been demonstrated to affect black vulture nesting success, like the nesting success of a lot of species. So it's possible that what we're seeing now with, suddenly there are more, black vultures like invading or whatever, they're probably returning to where they had been historically, but have not been for maybe 100 years. So, and then Audubon's description is they're half domesticated in our towns. Hundreds of them are found on the rooftops, which is, again, the same thing that people complain about often with black vultures today. Black vultures make really good use of human subsidies, which is something that Keith Bildstein, who's a retired director of conservation science at Hawk Mountain, he calls human subsidies, humans leaving out garbage, leaving dumpsters open, and in this case, leaving food, on the grill. This is Myakka River State Park near Sarasota, Florida. And I took this picture. It's not a very great photograph, but I watched these black vultures walk around and check the grills for food. The big predator has come through and, prepared its meat, and there's some stuff left over, and they are going to make use of it. This, I should give you a dead mouse warning. There's dead mice in this. This particular black vulture is Maverick, who lives at ACCA. He was hit by a car in the parking lot of a bar called Mavericks, and he suffered a shoulder injury that prevents him from flying well enough to return to the wild. Black vultures, like a lot of birds living under human care, it's important to give them enrichment to kind of keep their brains working. They don't engage in as much physical or mental activity, usually in captivity, as they would in the wild. So we give Maverick a lot of toys to play with, and to really try to keep his mind working, because he's a very, very active, kind of very interesting bird to work with. And I can't explain this particular behavior, but I want to show you this video anyway, that he plays fetch with plastic ball pit balls with us. And this is not something that he does like once in a while. This is something that he will do like every day. And we also put food in this dish of ball pit balls, so he has to kind of move them to get pieces of food out. But I can't really explain, why he kind of plays fetch the way he does. He also can do puzzle feeders. This is a puzzle feeder made for a dog, and we keep getting all of these different puzzle feeders to see if we can stump Maverick, the black vulture, and we haven't been able to yet. He can move all the little bits of plastic around to get the mice out. It's very enriching for him to get these different toys to play with, but it's also very enriching for us who get to watch him. He's just a very interactive, I don't know, intelligence is something that's really difficult to quantify and difficult to judge, but I think that he's a fascinating bird. So getting to the end here, hopefully everyone knows, right? Vultures are amazing and they're important, but vultures, are a little bit scary sometimes. People say, yes, Katie, vultures are very cool. We get it, but they are scary. And they can be, especially scary when they are gathering in big roosts, which sometimes happens in the fall and the winter, when the birds are kind of getting ready to migrate. There's nobody on a nest anymore. They're all sort of hanging out together. What are they doing? Are they waiting for me to die? Right? Well, probably not. They're probably just roosting together because it's warm, there's good wind, and there's a lot of food nearby. And there are social reasons to roost together also. They're following each other to food, and black vultures will tend to roost in these family groups. So it's not just, they're not just, you know, all roosting together because they know something like they're waiting for you to die. Do vultures attack people? You know, only if they're dead, right? To my knowledge, there has not been any, you know, vultures attacking people who aren't quite dead yet. There are definitely cases of vultures eating dead people, but not vulture attacks. And most vultures prefer dead herbivores, you know, deer, cattle, poultry, stuff like that. So I want to show you this video, and I want to try to, hold on here, you know, the sound is off. So this is a video of, you know, a dangerous black vulture not attacking my young daughter. And honestly, the black vulture is probably the you know, bird that people are just often very very worried about and very scared of. And this is really the only bird that I will let my kids interact with. It's the only bird that I really trust enough not to do anything dangerous with my kids. So this is my daughter Cora, who's actually named after black vultures. The black vulture's scientific name is Corvids atratus. So anyway, so I'm gonna move on from there. So other fears, right? Are they waiting for me to die? No. You know, turkey vultures don't follow dying animals or people, despite the movies. And, you know, they look creepy. People will often say, well, right, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You know, bald is beautiful. You know, they don't have a beautiful song like other birds, and they maybe don't have even a majestic, you know, scream like a red-tailed hawk. Turkey vultures actually don't really have the same kind of voice box that other birds have. So they just sort of hiss and grunt, and they don't really have any sort of song. So they are you know, interesting bird species, beautiful in their own way. So if you ever find yourself, you know, crawling through the desert, you know, dying of thirst, and there are vultures nearby, you know, don't be afraid, right? They're not actually following you, waiting for you to die. So if you're in this situation, you can just keep calm and carry on. So hopefully someone laughed at that. So that is the end of my presentation here. And I am very happy to answer any questions that you might have. This is Lou, the turkey vulture, in this picture. I want to point out quickly that turkey vultures in the kind of bird training community, there is most people are trying to get away from using anklets and jesses and other equipment on turkey vultures because their legs are not as strong as, you know, hawks and eagles, and putting equipment on their legs could potentially hurt them. So we're trying to get away from, you know, using jesses and anklets. And Lou is a fairly shy bird, but he will come out, eat a couple pieces of mice, and stand on his perch and go back in his carrier. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so I can look at the chat or see what questions are in there.
Sure. Lots of great messages. Lots of out loud laughter here, but I didn't really want to write LOL.
Yeah.
Kind of passe. So
good. I wasn't sure if anyone was gonna, you know, it's hard. It's really strange to tell jokes again by yourself in your bedroom.
I added your alternate subtitles to my book so I can remember those. So.
Oh, thank you.
We had a bunch of questions. If you see one you want to answer, go right ahead. Otherwise, I can give you one, or Natalie can.
Well, I just saw one. Oh, and it's moving. The cat is moving. But I just saw one about, I forgot to mention, how old do they get? And I forgot to mention that. So the oldest turkey vulture I think that I know of is 47, I believe. Wow. And that is a captive bird. And there are some other turkey vultures living under human care that are in their 30s and low 40s. So it's a long-lived bird. I think the wild record is only something like 15 or so. However, I suspect that age is that longevity in the wild is going to get higher and higher and higher as we get more wing tags and transmitters and stuff on vultures, because you can't tell how old they are by looking at them. And if the metal leg bands don't work for turkey vultures like they do for other species, it can be tough to know how old they are. They're already bald, right? And they don't get gray feathers really like people do. So, or we don't get gray feathers either, but you know what I mean.
Speaking of telling apart, how can people, or how can researchers tell the subspecies apart?
I think it's really hard. So my understanding is weight a lot of times. Like the North American birds are often of the 3 subspecies in North America, the subspecies in the upper west is the biggest one. The eastern subspecies is sort of the almost as big, and then the subspecies in the southwest is sort of the smallest one in North America. And in the desert southwest, in the wintertime, there may be some of both subspecies together in the same habitat kind of at the same time. And I don't think I've witnessed that, but they say that the subspecies in the Southwest is not as warty, doesn't have as much craggy stuff on their faces, and is just kind of a sleeker looking bird. One of the subspecies from South America has a white spot on the back of its head. And they are a lot lighter in the ones in South America. I mean, weigh a lot less. So
there's a lot of questions about.
I know, where do I start? This is great.
Go ahead.
I just saw, do vultures eventually die from lead toxicity? And yes, turkey vultures can die of lead toxicity. We have had turkey vultures come in with lead poisoning. It's too high for our cage side test kit to read. So we definitely do have turkey vultures that have died of lead toxicity, but it takes a lot more. They can handle a lot more lead than like a red-tailed hawk or a bald eagle or a golden eagle, but they can die from it.
Okay.
Speaking of eating, there was questions about, do they tend to just eat herbivores, or will they eat other birds that have died? Will they eat anything they find?
So I have in my reading, I have read that they seem to prefer, if it's available, dead herbivores, but they will eat. I think they will eat anything if they need to. So I have heard of them, turkey vultures, being witnessed eating roadkill dogs and raccoons, which is probably not their preferred food, but also dead chickens. Some farms where a lot of big poultry farms, there are a lot of chickens that may kind of put in a pile or a pit. Turkey vultures will eat them. And there have been human bodies that authorities have located because of the presence of a lot of vultures nearby. So they seem to prefer herbivores, but they will eat other things if it's available and they are hungry.
Okay. One of the questions.
They don't seem to eat each other, I should mention. I think I saw that somewhere in the chat.
There was a question about fratricide.
As far as I know, I don't want to say there's never been a case of something like that, but I think it was very rare. I mean, one way that people can, or one method that people use to sort of disperse turkey vultures and black vultures from a roost, like if some people don't want them, around on their house or something, one way you can deter them is, I guess, to hang an effigy of a dead vulture, or get a dead vulture from wildlife authorities to hang, and it's supposed to deter other vultures from the area, which seems backwards. Like, why would they not eat another, a dead animal of their own kind? But they don't seem to, which is pretty interesting.
That question was actually from our last January speaker, Sachi Shah, up in Canada.
Nice.
Wow. How did you come to love vultures specifically?
Oh my gosh. Well,
that's a pretty long answer, perhaps.
Well, it might be kind of short. I mean, I started to volunteer probably 20 years ago. I volunteered at a small wildlife center, and there was a turkey vulture in for rehab, and it was just amazing. It was so different from the other birds that came in. I mean, I think hawks and owls and stuff are also great and amazing. But a turkey vulture just kind of has just different. I mean, it's sort of unlike any of the other birds. It just kind of look at you in a different way. And the turkey vultures would always try to do things like try to figure out how to get into the other enclosures next to them to eat the food from the other birds, they just were very watchful and very observant. And it was just a really interesting. I feel like as soon as I saw a turkey vulture, I thought, whoa, that's a really cool bird, really strange. I never thought about them before. And then once I started thinking about them, I started seeing them everywhere. And I thought, like, whoa, where did all these turkey vultures come from? And it's kind of that, I don't know if you ever had that happen to you, where you never notice something, and then when you start noticing it, it's everywhere. Yeah. And I started seeing turkey vultures in roosts together along the road, and then I started to, they kind of became like friends that are they in this tree today? Oh, there's 8 of them today. There were only 4 yesterday. And they're very familiar, and they're just kind of always around and kind of watching. Yeah, I think they're really neat birds. And plus I think they have this reputation. Whenever someone calls you a vulture, it's not usually, a compliment. But it is if you call me a vulture. But
going back to one of your favorite things about vultures, vomit. Do they ever re-eat it?
Oh yeah,
totally, because they're hungry still. Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, we have so my we have 2 turkey vultures, right? Lou and Boris, that are kind of permanent residents, and they don't vomit. And I mean, they're accustomed to most things. However, I had Boris at a program years ago, one of her first offsite programs that she went to. And it was at a really nice dinner at like a hotel for a very nice bird club. And, cloth napkins kind of dinner. And I was giving a presentation, and something scared Boris, and I don't know what it was. And I, feed her little pieces of mice throughout the presentation, sort of a way to kind of positive reinforcement, just to kind of tell her, yep, you're doing a good job. Here's your mice. I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden, like, she jumped and it was like freaked out immediately and threw up, and just sort of like, it was like a cascade of vomit in this really nice hotel banquet room. She recovered right away though, and was like, fine, and then I kind of went around and with her, and I just picked up all the little pieces that she had vomited and just refed them to her. But they will also do that, in the wild and such. Also, if they throw up, they will re-eat it. Why? You can't waste that, right?
Right.
That must have made quite an impression on the audience.
Yes, yes. Luckily, I knew a lot of the people. And I mean, if you invite a vulture to dinner, you might let something like that happen. But she doesn't usually do that, and I'm not sure, what it was that scared her. Something happened.
So how much does a vulture need to eat on a daily basis?
Well, my turkey vultures, they eat about 100 to 125 grams of food every day. More when it's cold outside. So that's that. If you're thinking of it in the term your regular size rat, it's about half a rat. Or mice, it's maybe 4 or 5 mice. But turkey vultures we feed them, at ACCA, we feed them rats, mice, fish, chicks, quail. Sometimes we get archery killed deer, chunks of archery, bow killed deer, ribs and stuff that they really, really seem to enjoy a lot.
We had a bunch more questions. Do you have more time?
Yeah. I think my kids are in bed, so I got.
Okay, great. Yeah. We had some questions about the black and turkey vulture relationship, as far as, do they ever hunt together? Do they have any other interactions that are noteworthy?
So they do tend to. So here in North America, anyway, black vultures are often described as being like more aggressive, and I kind of put that in quotation marks because that seems sort of like a. I feel like there's got to be a better way to describe it. But they will sometimes displace turkey vultures from a carcass. So if the turkey vultures find the carcass first, black vultures may come and chase them away, displace them and then eat the carcass. However, in the tropics, sometimes the reverse happens with turkey vultures from North America that are just so much bigger than the black vultures in South America that the big North American turkey vultures will come in and displace the South American black vultures. And some of the biologists I've talked to who study them down there say that the North American turkey vultures in South America act more like the black vultures in North America, if that makes sense.
American tourists, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So and then black vultures will follow turkey vultures to food, but they will roost together also sometimes. I mean, it seems like black vultures are a little less, a little more likely to roost on human structures than turkey vultures. Like black vultures, may sometimes, roost on roofs and, right on people's houses and stuff like that. And turkey vultures tend to be a little bit less likely to do that for whatever reason. And it's also definitely, I see a comment there, it is definitely possible that they are hungrier when they get to South America. Those complete migrants, those turkey vultures that leave Saskatchewan and just go to South America, don't really stop to eat, and they're migrating very fast. So they are definitely hungry when they get there. Where turkey vultures in the eastern US, our turkey vultures are partial migrants, where you have some of them all year in West Virginia. Florida is about as far as eastern turkey vultures will go, and they don't really migrate very fast at all. They migrate slowly. They aren't eating the whole time, whereas the ones from the west that are kind of on a mission, migrating fast, are definitely hungry when they get to South America.
Well, we had some questions on their relationship with cars.
Yes.
Do they assault windshield wipers on cars? Somebody was told this in Florida.
Yeah, how weird is that? Yes. So that's mostly black vultures. Turkey vultures, I don't know if they've documented turkey vultures doing it as often, but black vultures, will kind of land on cars and rip the rubber stripping around the windows and windshield wipers. So I don't know why they do this. I've heard a couple of theories. One theory is that that there's something in the rubber that tastes good to them, like soy or or something else that's just in the rubber that gives off something that tastes good, or that they learn that it tastes good, or that they detect or something. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's been something that I've heard, that possibly it's tasty and that's why they do it. Other possibilities, I mean, black vultures and turkey vultures to an extent, and condors and other species spend some time kind of loafing, where they're not looking for food. They're not hungry. They're just spending time. And they could be pulling it apart because it's something to pull apart. And I have often thought, and so far I don't think anyone has done this, but I think it would be really neat to build a black vulture playground, near one of these areas where they just destroy cars so frequently. Like where you might put, I mean, our black vulture at ACCA plays with everything. I took off my sandal one day because there was like a rock in my sandal, and he ran over and grabbed my sandal and ran away with it, and like didn't do anything, just picked it up and put it down, and picked it up and put it down like a puppy or something would. I mean, every new object that we give him, he investigates right away and wants to know what it is. So I'm not sure why they do this to windshield wipers and to the rubber stripping, but it's interesting. It's interesting that they do it. I mean, I think it's I don't know why they do it, but it's interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like things that crows might do, or I think in New Zealand, there's birds that are constantly dismembering cars and things like that.
Yes.
Just curious. Yeah.
And I'm not sure if people have really done sort of intelligence kind of testing with black vultures, or that's something I don't know much about, but I think it would be, corvids are so smart, crows, ravens, jays, magpies, and parrots, of course, and kias are all very smart. And black vultures do a lot of similar, they have a social structure. They engage with other species and with objects in complicated ways. I mean, they're pretty cool birds.
Well, we had a couple more straggling questions, if you have a moment.
Sure. Yeah, I know I missed some.
Somebody says they seem to be better at avoiding cars than other raptors. Do you find that to be possibly true? I can't recall seeing a dead vulture by the side of the road. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I mean, we do get turkey vultures that are hit by cars, that come into rehab, but it's not as often as, I mean, I feel like we get a lot of like more owls hit by cars, than we do vultures. We have had people say, vultures can sometimes take a long time to take off the ground. If they eat a lot, they're sort of these, they can't jump up and fly away, as fast as some other birds can. So we have had vultures hit by cars where people have said, they tried so hard to get out of the way flapping, but just didn't quite make it because they were a little slow on the takeoff. So, I mean, we have had turkey vultures hit by cars because they're eating on the road. But it's a trade-off. If you're a turkey vulture, you've got these, wonderful roads that serve up all this food. But the trade-off is you could also be hit and killed by a vehicle. Just like there's the trade-off, if you're black vultures, and you learn that, oh, these animals are born and sometimes they're born dead and they're struggling, or, we learn to take advantage of that because that's how we stay alive. but there's certainly a trade-off with that. There's a trade-off with eating something that's been killed with, shot with a lead that then fragments. Yeah, you have a great gut pile, but there could be pieces of lead in it to make you sick. So definitely trade-offs.
Yeah, Jan had a good theory about if a hawk is chasing live prey, they're not going to pay attention to cars. That's another possibility. So
yes,
trade-off. So yeah,
they don't look both. An owl does not look both ways. Yeah.
People want to know more about your center too. I've given a link a couple times.
Thank you very much. Yes. Yeah. So we're going to celebrate our 10-year anniversary this year. So in a lot of ways, we're still sort of new, but we also get busier and busier. I'm just doing all the really fun federal reports, and we had over 650 individual birds come in for rehab this year. Just a lot. And we do all species of native migratory birds. So everything from, hummingbirds to eagles and vultures, of course, and everything in between.
Wow. And you work with Hawk Mountain and other places, or is that more on your own?
No, Hawk Mountain. The Hawk Mountain is sort of
far away, but...
well, they're about 5 hours from where we are. So they do a lot of research on raptor migration in general. So, and they do a lot of turkey vulture research. So, and we just know a lot of folks who I guess have worked there. The turkey vulture community is, not huge, but they are. We have some other organizations that we try to partner with for some research projects that we would like to grow. We would like to grow the research aspect of our organization more, but we'll get there.
Have you been to any of the vulture fests in the Midwest or other places? I know you've traveled to other countries to see vultures, but
I have, but I haven't been to the Midwest to see vultures that often, which I should. I've heard about that, the town with the Vulture Festival in Illinois, but I've not been to that one. And I need to go there because I've not been, I've spent time in some time in Chicago, but not really in other parts of Illinois. Except I did go to Ewing, Illinois, and adopted some horses, but that is like a whole other presentation. But I haven't been to many other parts of Illinois other than Chicago and Ewing.
Well, we have a hawk watch in our county, and they've counted about almost 1,000 turkey vultures passing over this season. So we do enjoy them while they're here. Now we're going to definitely keep our eyes peeled for even more now that we know more about them, right? So
and it's turkey vultures are a lot less depressing in a lot of ways than other species. I mean, with birds, there's a lot of sad news, right? I think birds are declining, climate change, there's all kinds of, there's grassland birds are, going down, and like, it's all sort of shorebirds, they're all dying, right? It's often very depressing, but turkey vultures, and black vultures, there are more and more of them. They're doing well. They're expanding their range. They're living with us. They're taking advantage of the stuff that we do. They're eating our garbage. They're it's not that depressing, right? Fun to talk about.
You're getting a lot of praise now, just plain bald praise. So I hope you're enjoying that. We will send you the chat transcript if we can.
Thanks. I could
frame it or whatever.
I could read that. I could read it next, this weekend when we have a foot of snow.
Low.
And we do, I should mention, we do give So where we are in northern West Virginia, we're kind of right on the border of where there are, there aren't many vultures north of us, right, in the winter. Most of them kind of leave and head a little bit south, but we do have turkey vultures all year here. But our turkey vultures and our black vulture that live at ACCA have heaters in their enclosures. They have poultry heaters, so they can sit on them and keep their little feet warm on these cold nights.
It's good to have some of the advantages of living with the humans, so that's nice. Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you very much again for everybody coming to the talk. That was great. That was a great crowd. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for speaking. It was really interesting, very, very interesting and fun. I enjoyed your jokes. It was great.
So I'm glad you were that at least a couple of people were laughing.
Oh, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, it was wonderful.